Good evening. I would like to call the July 17th Indian Head Park Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Can we please have a roll called, please, clerk?
Trustee Iannacco. Trustee Saldana.
Here.
Trustee Eck.
Here.
Trustee Donnersberger.
Here.
Trustee Svetka.
Here.
Trustee Gazzis.
Here.
And President Amy Jo Wittenberg.
Here. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody that no official action, including any final action of Village Board, shall occur at the Committee of the Whole meeting. Minutes of the committee meeting shall constitute the official record of the committee meeting. Did we have any public comments at all, just so I know from email? Do we have any? Okay, thank you. Gavin?
Okay, the first item under discussion is the TIF District and Business Development District presentation by S.B. Friedman. And we have Caitlin Johnson and Andrew Glazner in the audience from S.B. Friedman, and they're going to go through a presentation that is in your packet, and it's also going to be up on the TV screen.
Fantastic. Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Does this pick me up? All right. Good evening. As Gavin said, my name is Andrew Glazner. I'm a project manager at S.B. Friedman Development Advisors. For the last couple of months, we've been working on behalf of the village conducting eligibility studies for a TIF, a tax increment finance, and a business district as it regards the triangle area within the village. I'm here tonight with my colleague Caitlin Johnson. Just for your context, we are working for a Chicago-based consultancy. We typically work with public and private sector clients on a range of urban planning, economic development, and community development projects. Special district designations such as these that we're talking about are within our core service area. And so what we wanted to cover today is some of the high-level overview of what TIF and business districts are, what their goals are, how they can be beneficial for achieving economic development outcomes, and specifically some of the work that we've done to date regarding business district eligibility within the triangle area. So seems as though most folks are pretty aware of this area. It's a high priority area for development. It is, if you're not aware, between Joliet and Wolf Roads, bounded on the south by I-294. It's roughly 12 parcels, 14 acres, currently a mix of commercial and residential properties. And again, over the last couple of months, we've been working through different TIF and business district eligibility studies to understand how this area qualifies as one or both of those areas. So I'll move into a short overview of TIF, what it is and how it works. Generally, municipalities like to use TIF as an economic development tool because it is one focused geographically on a certain area. It allows for local control of funds generated by property tax revenues to be reinvested in that area of specific interest to that municipality. Generally, TIF is used to address conditions of blight, attract new development, expand the tax base of the village or the area, and generally achieve broad economic development goals. TIF can be used specifically for updates to public infrastructure. It can be used to address extraordinary development costs for projects. It can be helpful for attracting new investment, proving a market with a new development type. It can be used to provide more public amenities that the market itself will not provide on its own. Again, generally it can be used for a variety of uses to attract new development or redevelopment that satisfies various goals within the village. So a simple overview of how TIF works. One crucial mechanism is the frozen-based EAV. When a TIF district is adopted, the property values of that TIF are frozen, and that allows for a consistent distribution or collection of property taxes that are distributed to taxing districts. That frozen-based EAV over the life of the TIF, over 23 years, is capped and therefore allows for that consistent generation of revenues for those districts. The TIF itself generates revenue based on incremental property value growth. So in the illustration you see on the screen, those orange bars represent supposed increases in property value based on new development, new investment, redevelopment, and it's that section of the property value that generates TIF revenue. And of course, after the TIF expires, then the full value of the area is subject to property taxes, and that generates a long-term benefit in revenues for school districts, taxing bodies, so on and so forth. TIF can be complicated, so sometimes there are misconceptions about what TIF is and how TIF works. We just want to address a couple of the key ones that we often encounter. One, TIF is not an increase in the property tax rate. As I described, the TIF revenues are generated by incremental growth in property values, so there's no additional tax levy that is imposed based on the adoption of a TIF district. The revenues, again, come from incremental property tax growth. TIF also does not divert money away from school districts or other taxing districts. That's, again, a function of the frozen base EAV that allows for taxing districts to receive generally the same revenue they received prior to TIF adoption throughout the 23-year life of the TIF, because that frozen base value is consistent, that is subject to the property tax rate, and therefore each individual taxing body levy is not impacted. It applies to the same property value throughout the life of the TIF as it did beforehand. And then lastly, I've touched on this a couple of times, but yes, the success of a TIF is dependent on growth in the tax base. So as properties are developed or reinvested in, that improves the property values generally, and that is what generates TIF revenue. So I just wanted to clarify some of those points. When it comes to establishing a TIF district, there are statutory requirements about what parcels are eligible or not, and that generally depends on the level of improvement within the area. So you can either have improved parcels or vacant parcels, and between those two categories, there are various ways to determine and show eligibility. When it comes to improved land within a TIF, there are really two pathways to proving eligibility, either as a blighted area, where you can find 5 of 13 factors present. Those 13 factors are, again, identified in the state TIF law. They pertain to physical characteristics of properties and buildings. They pertain to property value trends. They look at land use and proximity and adjacencies. But again, try and capture generally some of the existing physical characteristics and existing conditions of a proposed TIF area. For a conservation area, you just need to find 3 of those 13 factors, but you also need to show that at least half the buildings are 50 years of age or older. So these are just 2 different pathways to show eligibility. Really, the way you choose one or the other is based on the presence of factors. If you go one way or the other, it's still equally eligible to be within a TIF. Regarding vacant parcels, again, there's 2 pathways, kind of the same overall setup. There are a variety of factors that you need to find out of a potential list of 6. Again, on the one hand, you can find 2 of 6 factors that pertain mainly to physical characteristics. There's a second pathway based on environmental conditions or land uses. You just need to find one of those present. Again, you don't have to satisfy both. It's just one or the other. Generally, a TIF district will include both improved and vacant parcels, so you will have to walk through these 2 separate pathways and find which of the 2 different ways eligibility pertains to your site. But there's a lot of overlap between those 2 lists of eligibility factors, and generally we find these distributed throughout areas. It's just a matter of following the right path for whether your parcel is improved or not, which is largely based on the presence of a structure or other site improvements. So that's a quick run through of sort of how to get through the TIF eligibility process and how TIF works. When it comes to timeline and the process of adopting and establishing a TIF district, you have to start with that eligibility research, which is what we have started doing to date. From that, you finalize your eligibility findings, submit a draft report to the village, ultimately goes to the village clerk. At that point, you can enter the public approval process. That requires sending a public notice out to make people aware, first, of the joint review board meeting. That's a meeting with all affected taxing bodies. From that meeting, moving into a public approval process with a public hearing. That public hearing allows for public comment, review, and then from that public hearing, the soonest you can then adopt the plan based on the satisfying all eligibility requirements is 2 weeks later at a board meeting. So Overall, this timeline generally takes sometimes 3 to 6 months. Again, we are at the eligibility research step. And to be clear, we are under the impression that we can get through this, and we would be aiming for adopting or presenting the TIF for adoption to be active in 2026. So yeah, we're in July today. We think by the end of the year, working through this timeline is fine. It's similar to what we've done in other places historically. Move on to business districts now. Just again, a high-level overview of how they work and what they are. They're a little bit more straightforward than TIF. Business districts do impose a new tax. It's a sales tax on commercial activities, also on hotels, if there are any within a proposed business district area. The tax rate of a business district cannot be higher than 1%. It can only be adjusted in 0.25% increments. So there are these 4 rates you see on the screen or in your packet. Those are really the 4 options you have for a business district tax rate. The revenues generated by this business district tax can only be used within the business district for redevelopment goals. And like a TIF, the timeline of a business district is 23 years. There are a couple of strategic considerations when it comes to designating a business district, primarily what uses will generate business district taxes. As you can see, not all activities are subject to that business district tax. Things like food and beverage sales, alcohol sales, general merchandise, sporting goods, auto and boat repair parts, those are all examples of things subject to the business district tax. But for example, groceries, medicines, medical devices, personal vehicles licensed with the state, those are not subject to business district taxes. So when it comes to identifying an area or thinking about what new uses or activities might be suitable for a business district, it's just good to be mindful of what those uses are and whether or not they will be generating additional sales tax revenue within the business district specifically. The process to establish a business district is pretty similar to a TIF, although simpler. Again, you have to conduct an eligibility study. You draft a report documenting your findings. You submit that to the village. We are at the point now where we are about done drafting our plan, and we'll turn that over to the village for review and for final submission, really by the end of this month, early August. At that point, you can again enter into the public approval process. For a BD, that really means you have a public hearing, and at that point, you can have a vote following the public hearing, you can have a vote to approve the BD and the tax rate. And at that point, the tax rate generally goes into effect, and the process of collecting those sales taxes and remitting them to the village can occur. I'll really take a deeper dive into the BD process based on the work we've done so far and the eligibility findings that we've studied. It should clarify that timeline in a little bit more detail on what eligibility means for the business district that we're talking about today. So like a TIF, there are eligibility criteria that need to be found present within a proposed business district. It's a shorter list of factors, but they are quite similar. You need to find the presence of at least one quote-unquote blight factor within a business district study area. This includes deterioration of site improvements, inadequate street layout, improper subdivision or obsolete platting, unsafe or unsanitary conditions, or the existence of conditions that endanger life or property by fire or other causes. You need to find just one of those, and then also be able to relate that to one of 4 adverse impacts on the area. So through our research so far, we've found the presence of 3 blighting factors: deterioration, inadequate street layout, and obsolete platting. And cumulatively, we find that those have an effect of economic underutilization within the area. To get to these determinations, we looked at parcel level data from Cook County. We came last month and did fieldwork within the study area, documenting physical existing conditions. We received engineering information from the village regarding infrastructure, utilities, traffic collision data. We looked at historic property value trends for parcels within the study area, and also looked at building permit information to understand the level of recent private investment. And through those different data points, we assessed on a parcel-by-parcel basis, or sometimes area-wide, the presence of eligibility factors that I just discussed, and I'll talk in more detail on the next few slides. So the first factor to discuss is inadequate street layout. We found this to be present area-wide, impacting all 12 parcels. The information that we received from the village, first of all, described the intersection between Joliet and Wolf Road. It has a high crash incident rate. It seems to be dangerous, unsafe. Those conditions are based on the memo largely because those roads are experiencing traffic volumes that appear to be above the capacity for which they were designed. We've heard from the village that there are early planning, in the early planning phase of widening Wolf Road. That was a recommendation that we saw in one of the engineering reports to address those unsafe conditions. But the presence of the layout of that intersection today, as well as the planned improvements, do have an impact and adverse effect on access to and mobility within the study area. Also, Vine Street, it's the one internal road within the study area. Again, based on information from the village, it has a widely varying width. It does not always have consistent construction specifications. It doesn't have proper lane markings to facilitate two-way traffic. Generally, it's not built really up to current standards. So based on these factors, or the data points, we found this factor to be present area-wide. Second is deterioration of site improvements. We found this to be present on 7 of 12 parcels. The common forms we saw were crumbling, cracking of sidewalks, roads, the peeling, siding on buildings. Again, you can see on the map, 7 of 12 parcels exhibited this factor. We found it to be meaningfully present and distributed area-wide. And then third, improper subdivision or obsolete platting. We found this to be present on 6 of 12 parcels. There are several parcels within the study area that their current shape and size does not appear to support modern commercial development. And an additional parcel that appears to be improperly subdivided based on it currently hosts one, I believe, single-family residence and one commercial building. That's between Vine Street and Wolf Road. Just a legacy of the platting there. But based on the distribution of these factors and the presence overall, we found it to be meaningfully distributed and therefore applicable for the study area as an eligibility factor. And so based on those 3 factors we found present, we also determined the area to be considered as economically underutilized. We first looked at historic property value trends within the area and found that in 3 of the last 5 years, property values have decreased. We benchmarked that against growth in the consumer price index, which measures sort of inflation. And again, because of decline in 3 of the last 5 years, growth has been slower than the growth in CPI. So that's one first indicator we generally look at to understand the relative economic utilization of an area. In this case, found it to be indicative of economic underutilization. Second, we also looked at the level of private investment. Overall, 8 of the 12 parcels are considered vacant. That's again based on the lack of a structure on the property. In some of these cases, those properties have been without a building for what appears to be 5 or 7 years, in some cases maybe 15 or more. But that long-standing trend in lack of development on those parcels is symbolic of a lack of private investment. As I mentioned before, we also looked at building permit data for the area since 2021. And the overall level of private investment appears to have been limited, mainly focused on interior or exterior rehabilitation, but again, no new construction, no significant or substantial rehabilitation. So we found the required eligibility findings. I just spoke through some of our additional required findings, that being economic underutilization, lack of growth from private investment. There are 3 additional ones. The first is the but-for test, which is really a determination of but-for designation of a special district. Substantial redevelopment or new construction is unlikely to occur. We feel based on what we've seen in terms of property value trends, the lack of any new development or significant rehabilitation, the overall level of private investment, that yes, but for the designation of a special business district, redevelopment is unlikely to occur. And then lastly, the contiguity of the study area, just a simple measure of if the parcels are adjacent to one another, they currently are, and then the conformance to plans of the village, checking to make sure that the business district would not be in any conflict with goals within the comprehensive plan. Speaking of goals, I guess just to be clear, the goal of the business district would be to address some of those factors of blight that we found. Overall, it's meant to support the creation of a vibrant commercial area that can enhance the tax base in the village, enhance quality of life overall, specifically by attracting new development, by improving public infrastructure, and generally, once again, trying to attract more private investment. So I alluded to earlier our schedule for moving through the business district designation process. We are prioritizing our eligibility study for business districts based on a end of September deadline that is imposed by the state, just in order to get everything set up for the business district, if approved, to be active starting in January. So you can see we're planning by the end of July to submit our eligibility report. At that point, once we file with the village clerk, the public notice can go out about the public hearing. Those dates fall within a range that's defined by the Illinois Business District Act. You have to provide notice in proper advance of that public hearing date. So that August 15th and August 22nd date are pretty firm. Again, just give the required prior notice of that public hearing, which is scheduled currently for that first board meeting in September. So we are a little over a month away, month and a half from that final board vote. Again, we're pretty far advanced through our business district plan. We feel comfortable with this timeline, but we're really aiming for that September 11th board meeting date so that we can, if desired, move through all of that approval process prior to that end of September deadline, which is when the Department of Revenue needs the ordinance from the village in order to impose the BD tax starting in January. So that was a lot we went through, but hope it was helpful for us to at least discuss what we're talking about in terms of economic development tools and where we currently stand on the business district eligibility study and our intention to move into that TIF district eligibility study once we conclude working through the business district. So if you all have any questions, we are both here happy to answer them, and we'll open it up.
I have a couple of questions. In the first chart that you had, it showed that prior to the establishment of the TIF area, you've got a frozen base, right there, yes. And so in the lower chart, those are where taxes are paid for schools and things like that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so on the top portion of that, it says growth of the EAV. So in other words, there's an increase in value, whether it's building another floor, building another building, but there's an increase in value. How is that taxed?
So that is all subject to the same property tax rate within the village. That portion in orange, right?
Yes.
Is not generating any tax based off of the school district levy or any other taxing body beyond, I believe, the village.
Say that again? So the school district does not benefit from that?
Yeah, the school district only receives, or in the other overlapping taxing bodies, only receive that dark blue portion with the frozen base EAV. Any revenue generated from property value growth above that gets allocated to a special tax allocation fund in which the village can use to support redevelopment goals.
Okay, and does the village impose that tax? Is that part of what you're going to submit for a recommendation?
It is based off of the composite tax rate that is set annually. So it is the same tax rate. You know, a property has the same tax rate that gets applied to their value. It's just that a portion of those taxes get diverted into the special tax allocation fund.
So that portion of taxes that would otherwise have gone, for example, to school districts, would not go to school districts, it would come to the village?
It would, the increment would not go to the school districts, but for having the TIF in place, development would not occur to generate that additional increment. From that perspective, the school district or overlapping taxing bodies are not necessarily losing out on any revenue because that revenue would not have been generated but for the existence of the TIF.
But the entity is going to pay higher taxes based on increase in value, no?
Nope, they would pay the same taxes that they would pay. It's just that a portion would get diverted.
So I don't understand the orange portion then, if that
there's
is...
new development that occurs within the district, say there's a new commercial strip center, the increase that property value would increase, and that increase would be diverted into the special tax allocation fund.
May I? I think it's a little bit easier to explain that the property is not one property. It's the totality of the triangle. Right now, the totality of the triangle has 4 properties that are creating taxes, and everything else is not. And if you create the TIF, you'll have 10 properties within the triangle creating taxes, and so the difference is what goes into the special fund. So the schools don't lose anything, because without that development, the schools will still get the 4 original properties taxes anyway.
And in fact, Charlie, after the whole thing is done, was it 23 years or whatever, the school districts will in fact get an
Even more.
increase in taxes, because we've now increased the property values, and so we'll be collecting higher
That's
taxes.
23 years down the road.
Well, yeah, it's going to take
The
that long.
schools
It may
don't-
not take that long, but
But otherwise, those 10 full properties of taxes are not going to happen. They're continue receiving taxes out of the 4 and not out of the 10.
if we didn't do this, the school districts would be, and the rest of the taxing bodies would just be at the same level they're at now, and probably never get a whole lot more out of the triangle. But our goal is to increase the value of those properties and get a lot more taxes down the road. Maybe it's 23 years, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 5 if we're lucky, but we're giving ourselves enough time.
So how does the TIF encourage businesses to make this development that's going to create additional taxes then? What's the benefit to the business to be in a TIF?
If a future business or developer is interested in locating within the triangle area, they can approach the village to request financial assistance to support that development. And there's various financing mechanisms that can be used to support those projects using TIF funds.
What, if any, restrictions are there? Let's assume the growth occurs. Revenue goes for TIF fund. What are we allowed to use that fund for?
Yeah, they're generally, you can use this for, again, public infrastructure improvements that would make the property ready for development. If there are any extraordinary costs related to that development based on the conditions of the site or any other extenuating circumstance, you can reimburse those costs. There's a variety of relocation costs that you can pay for with TIF. You can pay financing debt costs with TIF.
The first couple of years, though, obviously, typically, and this is what you do, what would the village expect to front load to get that growth? In other words, the first few years, there is no TIF fund, right? So what would be a reasonable expectation of commitment from the village to really give this the opportunity to do what it should?
That varies by municipality. Many municipalities are very conservative in the amount of assistance or amount of investment that may occur. Some communities aren't willing to put money in without a firm project in place. So while others are more willing to quote unquote bet on themselves and say if we make these investments they will occur. To make that decision, there's various things that you may want to consider: market potential, like have there been any recent developers or business interests that have been approaching the village, any requests for assistance. So it really does vary. At this point in the process, we're not at a stage that we can really give a firm answer that you need to put in money up front, but doing so is riskier.
I have a question, because I'm not really sure how the classes for taxation work, the 6B, 8B, et cetera. If this was to be a TIF, and considering that you just mentioned some of the properties have been vacant or underutilized, is there any preclusion from someone applying for a 6B if it's a TIF district?
There's no preclusions. property owner were to apply for a 6B, that would reduce the assessment over a period of time. That would just reduce the amount of increment that could be generated within the TIF. So it's just another form of assistance to
But-
support them.
But it would be like if they feel like the Class 6B is an actual
That they can
benefit to them because the TIF doesn't benefit them. The only benefit is if in the future there's money in the TIF that they can draw out.
Yeah, and if they enter into a redevelopment agreement. So just because a new business locates here, they are not guaranteed reimbursements unless you enter into a formal redevelopment agreement.
And then, so if someone were to notice, that there's areas that have 15 years and we consider it blight, that would be a good way to also draw businesses if we were to say that we would approve a 6B
The 6B.
or whatever it is.
The effectiveness of the TIF district because it reduces the assessment value and the taxes that can be generated. But if you're trying to reimburse the same property owner, a 6B versus the TIF doesn't have any real difference to them in terms of benefit. If they
Yeah,
were-
but how do we start the process? We're not going to have that money unless someone starts the process of moving in. So in order to draw someone to move in,
Yeah, part of what we're thinking about is how TIF and BD can also work together. BDs, unlike TIFs, can start generating income or proper sales tax, business district taxes right away, starting January 1st. So that seed money, you could say, can be used
Okay.
to help kind of entice development, get some interest,
But-
and then TIF can enhance that.
yeah, but that's generated by the businesses that are current right now. So how do we bring a new business? How do we entice someone to move in to increase?
You could use
The
the
base.
business district taxes from the businesses that are currently there to entice new businesses
Okay.
to locate there.
Thank you.
Can we issue bonds that are subject to the payment from TIF funds?
It is possible to issue special revenue bonds backed by TIF. It would depend on TIF. You'd have to prepare TIF projections in order to understand the capacity for that debt service. And often we see municipalities being required to back that by the general obligation also.
Yeah, I was thinking, as Jim was saying, the first couple of years, there's no revenue, but if you issue bonds, you've got to pay it, so there's got to be a combined source of funds, a general obligation bond, perhaps initially, and then replaced by TIF funds afterwards.
Yep, that's how it's typically structured, to be a GO upfront, to refinance to a special revenue bond if increment is being generated.
I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of echo what Caitlin is saying, is that, yeah, there's multiple options that you can use for this. But one of the things, and that's why when we're looking at this, we're looking at both having the business district, which will generate funding up front that we can entice in people, or, offset early costs, and then looking at that, pairing with that to then having increasing the infrastructure that's there, getting rid of, our vacant land, improving the land that's there, which would then turbocharge the TIF is what we're looking at. But the other point is that a lot of companies or a lot of businesses that come in, a lot of developers also have come in, understand what TIF is and what they can do for it, so they write that into their financing, write that into their projections, so they might not need all the money up front. If I know I'm going to put a hypothetical scenario here. If I have someone come in and put a 5-unit apartment building there for X amount, they know what their taxes are roughly going to be. They know what they're roughly going to generate, correct? And so they'll look at it and say, okay, well, I know I'm going to roughly generate this. The property right now is generating $1,000 in property taxes. I know I'll be generating $100,000 in property taxes. That they'll know that once that all gets done, that money is going to be coming back to them. So they'll eat it on the first upfront and use it to pay their debts and pay the financing the building later on, which is something that's very common. And I've talked to a few developers, not when I've been here, but in other places that look at doing it like that too.
So it says on here you're going to have the business district plan done by next week.
Yes.
And
we do have
what
a
will
fully-
that entail?
Sorry?
What will that entail?
That would be a more detailed description of the eligibility factors, which I covered this evening. It will include a financing plan, which really specifies eligible costs that can be paid for through the business district. It'll include a budget, which we've currently set up. The budget is important because it puts a cap on the total amount of revenue you can spend within the business district. So the specific line items within a budget detail eligible costs, but the budget is a draft. You are not tied to any specific line item estimate. It's that overall bottom line budget that puts a cap on your spending within a business district. So we've prepared projections that are, I'll say, optimistic, just to give a high ceiling within that draft budget. And that just allows you more room to run with a business district. Should it develop a lot of revenue, you're fine to use that revenue up to that cap. So all that will be within that eligibility report or that draft redevelopment plan, but it will be largely this eligibility information which we discussed.
So the plan then will be used to attract the businesses and developers. Is that right?
The plan is more so a summary of our eligibility findings. It's useful for adopting the ordinance that sets in place the business district. Really, it's the district itself and the marketing of that district that can entice new development.
Any other questions? I think one of the reasons that we entered into this arrangement and the Economic Development Committee felt strongly about this is because it's one of the areas that we get a lot of feedback about. Our residents tell us that the corner looks terrible, it looks dilapidated. They want development, neighborhood, family-friendly development, and they want things to look better and be better for the village and also be economically advantageous. So thank you very much for providing the information on these two options. I know we're going to have a lot of discernment regarding these, and we look forward to receiving the first report. And then when will the TIF report come?
That'll be later, late fall, early winter. Again, a lot of the information we have from the village already applies to our TIF eligibility research. Just given the deadline for moving through the BD process, we are not under that same strict deadline for TIF, so that's just being moved just below the BD to the priority. So it'll be later in the fall when we get that TIF eligibility study finalized, and you all can read it then.
Madam President, can I ask that if there are members from the Economic Development Committee here that have questions, can they ask them?
Absolutely.
Could I just add one additional point on the timing for the TIF? We are specifically aiming to have an adoption come forward in early January or early 2026. Doing so allows you to, adopting in 2026 versus 2025 gives you that additional year. So that's why we're not trying to rush through the process to get a December adoption, for example. So
What is that deadline for the county clerk to receive the resolution, though? So they can apply it to the assessment?
it's just starts January, any district established January 21 gets a frozen base EAV of 2025, of like whatever the most recent taxes are. So
Yes, but when is the deadline to send
there's
to
no
the,
specific deadline. For
how do they
business,
extend then? They have to do their extension for the rate.
there's no specific deadline in which you have to do it. Once you adopt, you just send the files to the county and then they will impose it for the next cycle.
And
The
that
next
is the
cycle.
deadline. What is that deadline? Is it February, March?
There's no specific deadline. It's just whenever, after you approve the ordinances, you provide the documents to the county, and then they will send
It'll
the
apply
special
to the
tax
next tax
allocation
year.
fund.
Yeah, but there's like, the county clerk has a date when they're, the final date to do the extensions, so that's why I was asking. Okay?
So Jim or Kate, do you have any comments or questions?
Not a question, but we had a lot of discussion about this within the EDC committee. But I think that what the committee is trying to do is to respond to a number of comments that were made from the community about the fact that one of the main,
Yeah.
one of the main entrances to our village, you know, looking at the triangle up there, it's pretty tacky looking. There's a lot of deferred maintenance, the vacant lots around there that nothing's been done with. We've got a coming soon sign that's about ready to fall over. It's so old. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to increase not just the physical value of the beauty of the village, but to enhance, even for the businesses that are there now, enhance a way to build their own business by improving the way that the triangle looks. And there's other opportunities as well for the properties around there. There's a lot of empty property, but it's a very inefficient layout as we've got it right now. So I think that the end goal is, as we've been talking about it, is going to be to have something that makes the village more attractive, that serves the residents better, can bring in a better selection, or bring in either new businesses and things like that that would be beneficial to the people in the village. It'd tie in with the Wolf Road expansion, and I think make us a more desirable community, because we've got communities around us that some people feel are more desirable because they're more attractive, or they're dressier. And, you know, in some cases, people have said that, you know, we're kind of like the poor cousin with the physical appearance of the way that the village looks, with particularly the triangle. So I think that this is a project that has been talked about for a long time. We've been struggling to try to find the best way to do it. And, you know, for the last couple of years that I've been on the committee, you know, along with Kate here and the rest of the committee, we've all been really painstakingly looking at other villages and other communities where we can see what they've done and how it's benefited the community. We've taken a field trip to a different community that's put in place a TIF, and it's made a remarkable difference in the community. That's Mundelein. And anyway, so I just wanted to encourage the conversation going forward and looking at it, you know, kind of as we collaborate amongst our minds here, and come up with a way to improve the village. And this is the best thing that we've found so far. And you know, we are kind of trying to push it as much as we can so that we can benefit the citizens sooner.
And just quickly to piggyback on that, I think it's worth noting that this does follow a great many other initiatives that have been tried, those being collaboration and cooperation with the businesses, you know, marketing efforts, meeting business leaders, trying to encourage further business. So it's not as though we went all the way to TIF and all the way to BD. We did many things on the way to that, and I think that's worth noting.
Thank you. I do have one more comment or question. So we're going to get we're going to start the process to get a business district for that area. But the next step is attracting businesses in there and development in there. And will you be with us for that?
That is not part of our current scope. We are focused on establishment of the districts.
So, but do you do that?
We do.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, but that's the later.
Let's just make the agreement that if you do have questions, please get them to Gavin so he can get them answered for you, okay? I think we're on to item B, the West Cook County Solid Waste Agency presentation.
Phil Kowalski from the agency is here to talk about, excuse me, first the Regional Disposal Program, which supports environmental sustainability and provides reliable long-term landfill access. And if we, at some point in the future, decide to participate in the RDP, it will have an impact on the RFP that Phil is also working on for our waste hauling franchise agreement. We have gotten an extension, an additional extension with SBC that will bring us all the way to April of 26. And that gives us more time to develop that RFP, to get it out to market, and to get responses. But we'll start with the RDP and how that will impact us if we participate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Pleased to be here. Just point of clarity. I work for Geologic Associates Incorporated. We are the technical consultant to the West Cook County Solid Waste Agency. So, in virtue of the fact that Indian Head Park is now a member of the agency, we are also your consultant now as it pertains to solid waste issues. So I am not directly an employee of the West Cook County Solid Waste Agency. We're the consultant to that agency, also working with you folks. Len Canada, who is the administrator of the agency, had a conflict for this meeting tonight, so he indicated he would try and get here as soon as possible. So hopefully he will show up before I'm done talking and he can introduce himself then. So I guess I'd like to start at this point, and here he is.
Hey, Len.
Just in time.
I do.
So this is Len Canada, administrator for the West Cook County Solid Waste Agency. So we've been meeting with Gavin and the president over the past few months on solid waste issues for Indian Head Park. And I guess I just would like to start going back a little bit. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, this community had an open subscription model for solid waste services. So that meant either the HOAs or individual households contracted directly with a hauler to pick up their trash. So that could mean that you could have 3 or 4 different haulers servicing, the same block of houses on any given week. So 5 years ago, this village implemented a franchise system. Think of it as an attempt to streamline things, where there would be an exclusive hauler servicing most of the homes in this community under a contract with the village. That was a big change, to go from an individual subscription model to a franchise model. And I think everyone on the board is aware of this. It wasn't, on the first go-around, implemented maybe as cleanly as we would like to see. So some of the HOAs were in the franchise agreement and some of them were out. So hopefully through this process, where we are now going to issue another RFP, things will get a little more simpler and a little more streamlined for everybody. I work for you all. Len's here is, on behalf of the agency, is here to lend support to this group, but ultimately what you want in terms of your hauling agreement is what we will put into the RFP. So what we wanted to bring to your attention today is a program, a special program that has been in operation now for almost 3 decades, called the Regional Disposal Project. If you think of your hauling contract as consisting of 2 pieces, a private waste hauler is hired to perform the collection activity, which means they'll run by every house on a weekly basis, pick up the trash. So that's the first step. Then the second step, the hauler has to take that trash somewhere to dispose of it. And what the Regional Disposal Project is intended to do is to provide an alternative for Indian Head Park to consider for that second step in the process, where the trash ultimately gets taken to for disposal. It's a regional purchasing effort. It's a voluntary program. So right now, the RDP has 14 municipalities that participate in the program. And the idea is, by pulling their trash together from these 14 communities, the program will be able to obtain cheaper disposal pricing and more beneficial contract terms than any individual town could get on their own. So as I indicated, right now, 14 municipalities and the Brookfield Zoo participate in this program. The program was kicked off, initiated in 1997, and has successfully operated since that period of time, so for almost 30 years. When this program was formed, there were 3 objectives that the agency hoped to provide participating members in the RDP. Obviously, reduce costs for solid waste disposal, but also price stability from year to year, which helps communities with their budgeting efforts, because solid waste can have fluctuating prices often, and then to provide enhanced environmental safeguards. So one of the reasons, going back in 1997, that this program was developed was to address a couple of trends. First of all, the Cook County is now highly developed. So there's no room for solid waste disposal facilities anymore. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, this may be surprising to you, there were probably 35 landfills operating in Cook County. So it was often a matter of going a few miles before your waste would be disposed. That's all gone. There are no landfills operating in Cook County. And you can see on the map on page 3 of the presentation, all the landfills serving the Chicago metro market are now located 80 to 100 miles away from the metro area. So obviously that can impose significant cost increases when you have to transport waste that far. So fortunately, there are a lot of transfer stations located in Cook County. Transfer stations are buildings where the trucks that pick up your trash from your home on a weekly basis go to. They'll empty the trash within the building, where it'll get reloaded onto semi-trucks, which is more efficient for transporting the waste 80 to 100 miles away. And so that's essentially what the Regional Disposal Project does, is the West Cook Agency contracts through a bidding process. It's a competitive bidding process to contract with local transfer stations where the waste will be initially transported to, and then ultimately to the landfills that are located further away. And again, the whole principle behind this was by working together regionally and cooperatively and bundling trash together. It's a trash is a volume business like any other business, so hopefully that, and it in fact has resulted in better pricing and better contract terms. So what does this mean for Indian Head Park? This is an option for you. So when the RFP for your hauling goes out, one option could be just to have the waste companies bidding on the collection of your waste also include the pricing to handle the second stage, which is the disposal of the waste. But as an alternate to that, you can have the hauler just submit pricing to perform the collection services, and then by joining the RDP, Indian Head Park would have the disposal covered through the agency's program. And this can all be handled seamlessly. It doesn't necessarily mean you would be signing 2 contracts, one with your hauler and one with the West Cook Agency. It's flexible enough where even if you do participate in the RDP, the costs of disposal through the agency's program can be handled through your hauling contract, and so you wouldn't be seeing those, a second set of invoices either to your residence or to the village itself. The current RDP contractor is Groot Industries, who has a historical presence providing collection services in this town. So they are the agency's contracted vendor to provide transfer and disposal services. What's particularly beneficial to Indian Head Park is one of their transfer stations is located in McCook, which is less than 5 miles away from here. So that transfer station, should you elect to participate in the RDP, would be located very conveniently to Indian Head Park. It's not tied, participation in the RDP is not tied to any particular hauling contractor that you want to work with. So if you wanted ultimately to work with Waste Management or Republic Services or SBC, your current incumbent hauler, or Groot or Lakeshore, any of the companies that provide hauling services, you would be able to select them based on, you know, who offers the best service and the best pricing for collection. And you could still participate in the regional disposal project. We have done periodically benchmarking studies of the performance of the RDP. Typically, we do it every 10 years when the agency's contracts for the for the transfer and disposal services are typically written on a 10-year term. So as we approach the anniversary, a 10-year anniversary of a contract, we'll perform a benchmark comparison for towns that participate in the RDP and towns that don't. And generally, what we found is that towns that are in the RDP save anywhere from 10 to 20% of their garbage collection and disposal costs versus the non-participating members. So that's one of the pillars of the program, is providing lower cost service. There are also environmental benefits written into the agency's contract with its disposal vendor. These are listed on slide 6. So you will have guaranteed access to transfer and disposal capacity. Groot is backed by Waste Connections, which is the 3rd largest waste services company in the U.S. So they have, they provide a comprehensive indemnification against any future environmental liabilities. They also provide very strong limits of insurance. So there are a lot of environmental safeguards. And then there's price stability. Under our current contract with Groot, the fees are bracketed in terms of annual escalation. They're tied to CPI, but there's a cap of 4% with a floor of 1.5%. And that really provides more stability, particularly over the past few years where inflation rates have been 6 and 7% in certain years. So capping it at 4% obviously provides stability and cost protection to participating members. For your Public Works Department, there's another benefit. Usually when a Public Works Department takes a roll-off box, a 20-yard or 40 cubic yard box to a transfer station, the operator of that transfer station usually has a 4-ton minimum charge. The roll-offs might not always have 4 tons, so you wind up paying for more than you're actually disposing. So under the RDP, if your Public Works Department has a roll-off box that has only 2 or 3 tons of material in it, they're only going to pay based on 2 or 3 tons. They're not going to pay a minimum. So I guess in closing, getting back to the price stability and pricing, this is the last slide of the presentation. So I'll start with the bar chart on the right. There are 3 large public contracts for disposal services in the metro area. The City of Chicago, the West Cook County Solid Waste Agency, and then the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, which is, I don't know what, a similar agency to Len's agency serving the northern suburbs of Cook County. So what you can see there is that the West Cook agency through the RDP just has the lowest pricing among those 3 contracts. And what's notable about that is the Northern Cook County contract has about 3 to 4 times as much tons handled as the RDP, and the City of Chicago has about 10 times as many tons handled. And so usually you get better pricing the more tonnage you delivered, but the agency has been so effective in its procurement and contract negotiation that it actually has the best pricing of any of those 3 public agencies. And then the price stability is the line chart shown on the left there. So over the past 25 years, the average annual increase in the disposal fee for the RDP has increased about 1.5% per year, which is about 2/3 the rate of inflation over that same period. Over that time period, the average rate of inflation was about 2.5%. So I'm sure you're all aware, a lot of expenses, both in your homes or at the village level, it's hard to keep them at the rate of inflation. So this program has been particularly effective because over a long period of time now, 25 years, you know, on average, the increase has been below inflation. So again, that provides a lot of stability in pricing to the member communities that participate in the RDP. So it's flexible. It does provide cost efficiencies, a lot of environmental benefits. All in all, this is a very good program, we think, for member communities that participate in the RDP.
Any questions from the trustees?
Yeah, you'd mentioned that McCook was the closest drop-off place for trash, is that right?
Under the
Transfer.
current RDP contract, yes.
Yeah. And does it make a difference whether it's Groot or any other hauler? They would take it to McCook and drop it off at that point?
Correct.
So how does Groot fit into this equation then?
So Groot,
Do they maintain that McCook facility?
yes, they own that transfer station. So they contract with the West Cook County Solid Waste Agency to provide that transfer station to communities that participate in the RDP. So the agency contracts with Groot to provide that service to Indian Head Park. And whichever hauler you choose, whether it's SBC or Groot or another hauler, in the RFP for hauling, we would just stipulate, and in your ultimate hauling contract, you will take the waste collected from Indian Head Park to the facility contracted by the agency through the RDP.
So just so I can wrap my head around this, currently, we contract with SBC.
Yes.
And what we pay for them is picking up the solid waste and dumping the solid waste.
Yes.
That's what we pay for. And what you're suggesting is that then when whomever we contract with, will need to contract with you for the dumping of the solid waste, right?
So in the case of Indian Head Park, since money never crosses through your hands, everything is direct billed by SBC to your residents. The contract would specify that they would utilize, in this particular instance, the Groot facility in McCook. And They then would work the pricing for that service into what they would charge your,
So how do we know we're getting the lowest price then?
for disposal.
Yeah,
Well, one way we can verify that would be to allow, under the hauling RFP, 2 sets of quotations, one where the hauler picks where they would take the waste to on their own, and the second where the village is a member of the RDP and they would take it to the agency's contracted facility. That would give you some indication, you know, of the savings. I don't want to get over my skis here yet because we're reviewing certain information that SBC has submitted. But looking at the proposals that they submitted back in March, they were quoting the village a disposal rate of $68 a ton. So, and if you look on the last slide, you'll see that the RDP rate for this year is just shy of $53. So that would be another piece of evidence that it's lower cost pricing through the RDP.
We were not part of the RDP until recently, correct?
You're not part of the RDP, you weren't part of the agency even until recently.
We weren't part of the WCCSWA.
Correct.
And we
So-
became part of it
Correct.
recently. And our
Yes, we
cost to do that as part of the other
Yes.
organization was what? The additional,
How much was the solid waste?
how much did we
agreement?
pay to get in the solid waste?
$3,000.
$3,000 per year renewable?
Yes.
Okay.
We, for whatever reason, I cannot understand why we did not belong to this organization in the past, nor did we belong to the West Central Municipal Conference. So we have participated in that organization now, and now we are participating in solid waste.
So Phil, you know, and I know SBC is the current contractor, and we will keep it very general, but would we expect a waste hauler to put a little bit of premium on that, right? They're not going to give it to us for cost, so theoretically, like you're saying with the RFP, with the RDP at 52, 53, I guess, and maybe piggybacking off Eileen's question, would we get the price, or do we just say, hey, you have to use them, and then they can put whatever they want, whatever premium they want on top of that and factor it in their price?
That's unfortunately the nature of the beast. I don't, with the agencies, we have been pushing towns to kind of, when they go out to RFP on their hauling, to make the haulers bid on what I call an a la carte basis. So this is the cost to collect the stuff, that first step. This is the cost to dispose of it, which is the second step. And then this is the separate cost to handle the recycling. And then this is a separate cost to handle
Correct.
the yard waste. That way, it's transparent.
Sure.
And
Well,
we
it's
didn't
easy
do it
to-
that way the last time at all.
Well, at the end of the day, and I don't know how many tons we are, like, what does the $15 difference matter to us on an annual basis, et cetera? I don't know what those numbers are. I don't know if Phil knows.
So we have the information on the tonnage. It's a little old, but what, from '22? So
We have multiple years.
We have multiple
it
years.
varies, so round numbers, 800 to 1,000 tons.
Oh, okay.
So-
So it could be $15,000.
Yes.
$12,000 to $15,000. And, you know, as you know, Public Works, and I'll point to Joe there, because we get these construction contracts all the time, and depending on how those things are presented, there's all kinds of line items, and everybody has to make money, right? People aren't doing this for free. This is not a public service, right? You know, or a charity service, you know, waste. They need to make money. Whether they make it on 53 to 68 on the tonnage, or whether they make it somewhere else, I would think we would, not that we necessarily, you know, we can't line item that and say, okay, we'll take this, but use this for 53, right? They're going to give us their price based on those, based on how we craft that RFP.
Right, we're going to be able to specify in the RFP and be very specific. Phil's going to do the RFP, so we can take apart the pricing, and we are going to know the difference because their cost of picking up the garbage is 70% of the price, correct? And 30% is the RDP?
30% is the second part.
The second part.
Disposal. In round numbers, yes. So that gets to your point. If we save 30% on the disposal, that doesn't mean you ultimately save 30% because you're saving 30% on the 30% that is disposal. So that would be 10% overall. So it's been pretty consistent in showing some, so you're not going to overpay under the RDP and you're going to save some money. Is it going to solve every community's budgetary issues? No, but it does save money, and I think the big thing on this, it's really a hedge. You're probably aware that there's been a lot of consolidation in the waste industry. So again, going back 30 years, there were probably 15 or 20 haulers operating in this marketplace. Now there are 6, okay? And so that can put a community at a disadvantage because you're going up against much larger entities, these larger companies. And so by bundling the trash together, that gets a contract of size that's of interest to Groot or Waste Management or Republic. Gets pricing that is attractive to communities, but really provides a hedge that a town the size of Indian Head Park really doesn't have on their own, because it is a smaller community. So over the years, the agency has changed vendors for the RDP. So the first vendor to have it was Waste Management. They won the contract. They offered the best terms and pricing. Then it went to Public Services and then to Groot. And so that, I think, is the primary benefit for any town that participates in the RDP, is you're not going to pay more, even though you're going to get all the environmental benefits, the contractual benefits. You're going to save some money, but it's really a hedge, for the next time you go out to hauling, to RFP for your hauling, because it's hard for any town to command good pricing terms on its own.
Any other questions or details needed? Can you give us the timeline then on the RFP and what you're thinking about, Phil, for that? Because I know the board is going to want to take a look at that draft.
So right now, staff is collecting service levels from all these different HOAs. Once we have that compiled, we'll finish up the RFP. So assuming that proceeds apace with the data collection effort, hopefully by the end of August, we can bring a draft RFP back to the village for your review and approval ultimately.
How much time would the potential bidders have to submit?
So getting the extension through April of next year was important, because if the village issues the RFP in September, it's nice to allow 60 days for the vendors to respond to. So that would take you to October, November time period. Then you have a couple of months to review the proposals and make your decision on who you want to work with. And that still leaves, 3 or 4 months at the end to do if there's a change in haulers, to do that transition to get new carts delivered or not. So as we sit here today, that's a very feasible time schedule to allow you to make decisions and at your pace, and still leave enough time for the new hauler, if there is a new hauler, to make that transition at the end.
Any other questions? We good? Thank you very much.
Thank
you
you.
for coming. Thank you, Lenny.
I just showed up.
Now we're moving on to item C, which is the tree ordinance, Pin High Consulting.
So in your packet, you have what we're proposing for a new tree ordinance. It really just amends our current tree ordinance, and some of the changes are to expand protections to public and private property trees. And in the case of private property trees, it would only be those that require permits from the village. It adds a formal urban forest value statement, which speaks to making it really a part of our infrastructure and our planning, the urban forest, that is, and that it introduces a tree species list that is focused on trees that are non-invasive or non-aggressive and disease and damage resistant. And overall, the objective of the tree ordinance is to align with best practices and enhance our ecological resilience. Joe can speak to any questions you have about the tree ordinance, but our intention is to bring this to the August board meeting for a vote. That is dependent on getting approval from Morton Arboretum, who is managing the grant that we received for our urban forest, basically for planting 25 trees over the next 2 cycles of planting. 25 each cycle. I knew that didn't sound right. Thanks, Joe.
I have a question, just a clarification. Do we have a requirement to remove invasive species?
In some parts of the code, we do have that the village arborist, if they find specific invasive species or disease, that we can ask for them to be removed. But it's also like 25 years out of date because they only call out oak wilt. Yeah. But I think it's going to be much more up to date and broad, so.
Yeah, are we planning on updating that?
I've been talking with Andreas here and also Thomas from Pin High to try and get something in place because we do have a lot of trees that need to come down. I've been on private properties and I've had a lot of questions as to what can we do to have them removed, or I don't want to say make them remove it, but we have to do something because there's a lot out there that needs to be addressed.
Well, I think you said invasive.
Yes is the answer.
Well, invasive
Invasives
species
is-
or sick, or, like, now that we opened the Pandora box. So if we can look into like a requirement, or we cannot force anybody to do anything if we don't even have it mentioned anywhere. So.
Right, but it would be, I mean, when you look at how much invasives we have, it's cost prohibitive. We looked at this at one point, how many acres of invasives we have just in the village.
Mhm.
And it's so much. I mean, it would be cost prohibitive to try to remove all of that on our own volition. So,
We're trying
Just
to
on
make
village
it,
property you're talking
Yes.
about? Just village property?
yes. So
Yeah.
how would we expect a homeowner to do that?
What if they plant it?
Well, I mean, that's where the list, there is a native list of invasives that's on a planting list that they don't want you to plant those.
Oh, so we do have a list of prohibited, and do
Yes.
we have remedy
Yes.
if they do?
I'm not sure.
It's not,
They'd
is
have
it
to
in
put
the
that on the-
language that if they do, where's the remedy? We need to be able to make them remove it.
once we
So-
have the management plan complete,
Have to ask.
I'll talk with Thomas about that too and see if we can get some verbiage in there, because I know we're trying to do an incentive program to have people remove invasive. So,
That's a good idea, incentives.
yeah, so we're working on it though to get,
Okay.
like he said, a lot of stuff is out of date and we're just trying to get things up to code and up to snuff so that we can move forward.
Thank you.
So along those same kind of lines, in section 38-47, where it talks about removal without permit is prohibited, do we have, or are we going to have any language that specifically says what the fines will be associated with that? Because I don't think I've seen that.
And in that same 3847, definition of a public tree is public
We can't hear you.
Oh, in that same section 3847, the last, destruction of any public tree. The definition of a public tree would be just on public property, obviously.
On the public way?
Public way, public property,
Yeah, we'd have a,
setback.
yeah, it's either on that, or I think we're working on, or we have somewhat of a tree inventory list also. It really depends on, because there are trees in the public ways that aren't public trees that homeowners have planted themselves that, you know, it's a nice, healthy, mature tree that we're not going to do anything about it to take it down. You know, this is something that Joe and I have been dealing with quite a bit.
So then is the prohibition specifically limited to only public trees, so not private trees? So I can take any private tree down I want on my
No,
property?
the tree removal, the part of the ordinance is that you have to come to us if you are removing a private tree. And I believe.
There's a county ordinance on that as well.
Right, and I believe that I'd have to double check on this, 'cause I think this is just amending part of I believe part of this also just has a general penalty also in it, basically saying, you know, the
Is it
general.
still like the $50?
It's usually the general penalties are minimum of $25, not more than $750. And then also there was language, like I said, I haven't reviewed this one specifically, but there's language in the current one that basically says that upon the village arborist's determination that a tree should be replaced there, that they have to then replace the tree.
Yeah, I have a question about that too. but
Private
sorry.
property?
Correct.
Yep.
So theoretically, on private property, you're not informing the arborist, you're asking his permission.
Generally correct. Because, yeah, you're required to have a permit to remove a tree like any other sort of permit that you would require in the village. Because we are a tree city.
So is now the prudent time to address questions about fines for removing trees that are non-permitted?
Can you clarify your question for me?
Not permitted removal of trees.
A removal of trees. that
Oh,
haven't
so
been permitted, sorry.
unpermitted removal of trees.
Yep.
Yeah, if it's, like I said, I would have to redo this, and I'm sure we can touch up on it as well, if it's not in
Because
there in this
I
section.
personally would like to impose a significant fine for doing that.
There is state limitations on how much we can.
That's fine. Let's take
bit-
whatever the state
Which
limitation
is
is.
$750 per day per ordinance violation. But we also, once again.
750.
750.
That's
correct.
fine. I don't think we've actually, I mean, have we actually leveraged any fines against anyone who's taken down a tree without a permit? Like in the last 5 years?
Well, since we've only been here for 2, it's kind of hard to
I was
answer
gonna
that
say,
question.
yeah,
But
I think the answer is no,
yeah,
just
and-
based on what I've experienced living here. in
But
the
I've
last-
also, the trees that I've had taken down have had permits. I
Yep.
mean, and, you know,
Yep.
sometimes it's been kind of after the fact, but they still would get the, you know, somebody will give me a heads up that somebody's taking a tree down, and then.
That's usually me.
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's good, though. I'm glad we got somebody looking out there for it. But they might have to get a back permit on it, but.
But a
you know,
back permit sort of defeats the purpose,
Yeah, I
doesn't it?
agree.
Well,
Because that's like,
but
oh, you should have filed for a permit, pay
No, I get it,
$20.
and then that's where you could say you could impose a fine or something like that, if that's what you want to do, but ultimately, you're taking a tree off private property. It's their property to do so. So yes, we should get a permit to do that and do our due diligence, but it is a private tree. And if somebody wants to take a tree down off their property, they should be able to do that.
And to kind of, as I stated before, and that per the village arborist, they would have to plant a tree or trees to the satisfaction. As Joe said, most of the tree, every single tree I've seen, I don't think we've had an issue with, because either they've been dying, or there have been some trees that were healthier, but they were way too overcrowded, or they were presenting a danger to like the structure of the building, like getting into the foundation.
Yep.
So
So what do you mean by overcrowded? Who determines when it's overcrowded with trees?
If the trees are suffering because they're planted too close to each other and one's dwarfing out another one, that's when you go evaluate.
Okay, so you do evaluate.
Joe's
Yes,
judgment.
yeah.
Yep.
So on section 38-49, could we amend the may in the first sentence to shall?
I will get a legal opinion on that.
That'd be awesome.
I think we ought to find out what the county record is on that, because I had a neighbor take down some trees in LaGrange Highlands, and that he had not gotten permits. And there's a permitting requirement. I don't know if he was fined or
That's
not.
because it's
Yeah,
unincorporated.
it's unincorporated.
But does it apply to
It
incorporated
doesn't
areas?
apply only unincorporated. The Cook County cannot, and the Forest Preserve has their own separate ordinance too.
But it'd be nice to know what their guideline is as well,
Probably don't have
while
one.
we're looking at this.
To Danielle's point, the may there is this is what I was thinking of was, because it's very similar to what's in the code now. It's basically like the same way of if Joe comes in and someone removes a tree, he doesn't necessarily always require them to plant a tree back there because, as he said, for overcrowding, for safety issues, et
Yeah,
cetera, et
not
cetera.
back there, but like on the plot somewhere. Yeah.
And that's why the may is there. And from my understanding of it is you don't want them if someone has planted, or if it was an old lot, for instance, and the trees were all there, but now because of the house and other instances, I mean, Joe can speak to it more, but the may is there. The may exists, so we're not forcing someone to put a tree into a situation where the tree's not going to be healthy, or it's not going to be safe, or it's not going to be, because some of these wooded lots may have had their homes built when the trees weren't that much of an issue, or they're not that big, or they wasn't, one tree wasn't, as Joe said, getting crowded out. And so the may is, we can do it. That's what the may is, upon the village arborist determination.
Have we done it?
Not since we've been here.
I was going to
think.
say the majority of the trees that I've witnessed have been in such a lousy area that you can't plant another one there. It would be ridiculous to
I
plant.
like what Danielle's saying about, getting a permit and having some muscle behind it. However, limiting what people can plant on their own property is something different as far as I'm concerned.
You want to do a native species
disagree.
list, though. Yeah, you want to do something that,
No.
yeah.
So if I wanted to plant buckthorn in my front yard, you'd be
Right.
cool with that? I mean that's an extreme case, but I'm just saying, like, I strongly support us as a village having an ordinance against intentionally planting invasive non-native species. 100%.
I will say that I was recollecting right now, not an exact this situation, but we have done it in when I was flipping through some old permits of someone was doing. I don't remember if it was an addition or if it was a new home, but some of the trees were taken down without permission, and they shouldn't have been taken down, and so then we required them to plant new trees, and I believe it was it says the diameter here. So basically, they had a really big old tree, they had to plant smaller ones.
I mean, that's what happened to us when we had to take down like 3 large oaks, and we replanted like 5 of them on the property. So, yeah.
So
Because I support native species and diversification.
I'm with Charlie on this
absolutely.
one, I must say, and I love trees. Charlie, I'm with you. But I think it's a slippery slope to get into how we're going to dictate how a private owner uses their property. So that's great that you did plant those 5 oaks, because we got them too. But if Charlie doesn't want to, he wants
we could make a recommendation.
chopping them all down.
I
I don't know, we'll see.
I'm gonna say that I like that we have a list based on scientific analysis of what is the best trees for the area and which ones are absolutely prohibited. We can do that because
Yeah.
those trees.
We have a plant list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we put it in the newsletter?
You shouldn't be able to
Well, yes,
plant
it is
whatever
limited.
you want if it's gonna be invasive.
And
It'll be in the ordinance too, the tree species
And-
list.
Well, I think it's, I never realized there were so many, there's a lot of trees that you suggest we can
Oh, yeah,
plant.
it's a ton.
And I think it would be nice to once in a while share that with our residents so they know what's out there. Maybe you'll give them ideas to plant a tree when they weren't even thinking about it.
And this part of the code also, putting on my community development hat, also tends to guide for future developments. For those developments that are in PUDs, who've had previous landscaping plans as part of those PUDs, such as Ashbrook, we've told them before, like, you must plant trees that are required off of this list unless it was something else. Now, I haven't reviewed Ashbrooks to see if they got more dispensation or any of them actually, but I've noticed that when I've been reviewing annexation documents and PUD documents, the trees they said you must go by the list that it was in the code. So like I said, once you have a PUD, it gets a little bit trickier too, because those are often approved with landscaping plans. And so then there's another layer of what tree has to come down, what tree has to be approved. They're actually supposed to send us a landscaping plan. Actually, by our code, all the PUDs in the village are supposed to send us a landscaping plan at the beginning of every year, unless they have made no changes. I don't know if that's actually ever been enforced, to be honest with you, but it's in the ordinance, so.
So why don't we settle on getting any of your strong feelings or even small feelings about this, the edits into Andres, and then this still has to be approved by the Arboretum, correct?
Yes, yes.
So, you know, who knows when that'll happen too with all of the other changes. So why don't you get them all into Andres and copy Gavin?
And are we planning on extending this conversation to the next landscape committee meeting as well, or is this solely going to be handled at the board level?
Well, we're looking to get it approved on the board level.
Okay.
Yeah. So my suggestion would be that we bring whatever we can get approval for from the Arboretum to the next board meeting, August 11th. And if there are further changes, we go through that process for those other changes.
Yeah,
just so that we can get this done and start moving forward with our management plan.
After
Yeah,
this
we
for the
also need to
grant.
have it,
Yeah,
in-
I know.
Yeah.
we have to have it in place also in order to get the grant. So
And
we
the
have to have
Arboretum
this.
is reviewing this?
Yeah,
Is that-
he's got it. We
Okay.
actually had an email go through
I
it,
feel
yeah.
better about that. then.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I know you might want to tweak it when it gets there, but we need to get it in just so by my fall planting, we're ready to go.
Yeah, no, totally support that too, because that's a boatload of trees for a village, so, yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Joe.
Alrighty, now we're going to be moving on after the tree ordinance to accounts payable process. I think we're turning it over to Brandy. Is that correct, Gavin? Or are you starting?
I'll get it started. Brandy, our finance director, is here, and she will outline a new workflow for invoice processing using the new BSNA software, which is still on schedule to be kicked off August 4th. So it's coming up.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Just, we wanted to walk through the new process because we will be implementing the new, good, because I'm short, the new BSNA software. So one thing that we have to do is look at the processing of the approvals of the accounts payable. I'm going to walk you through the steps on it, and then if you guys have questions, let me know. But as the invoices come into the village, we have an accountant that will be entering it into our system, the new BSNA. It will be approvals will be sent to all the department heads. Once the department heads review, make sure the coding's correctly, et cetera, they will then move on to the administrator, which is Gavin, for his approval and overlook to make sure expenses look good. And then at that point, we will have a final review with our finance team. They'll create a list of bills, we call it. And that list of bills will be reviewed by myself as a finance director, make sure everything, the descriptions look good, it makes sense to the public and to the board. And we will be bringing that to the board at board meetings. And that's when the list of bills will be approved, or if we have questions, they can be pulled from there. Questions, can be answered, comments, et cetera, to be discussed. And then once the board approves, we will be printing the following day. Now, with that printing that will happen, it will have the automatic signatures of the two designated signers of the bank that we're allowed to have on there. That would be discussion with Gavin and Amy Jo here to let me know who would those two signers be on your checks. But again, this changes a little bit just because we're used to hand signing checks. One of the big processes is that bringing it to the board for full approvals. It's got to be a majority vote there. And then the checks will actually be printed once we have full approvals. Now, during the off weeks of the board meetings itself, we will be emailing the board the list of bills, so that way we still keep consistent with our paying our bills every 2 weeks. And that list of bills will have to be reviewed by the board, and we'll have to have a majority emailed back stating that we're good to go. And then that list of bills will be printed that Friday and brought back to the board to let you know what was approved at a board meeting.
Explain the process in a little more detail. Once we have sent out the bills list to all of the board, and we will blind copy everyone so there's no accidental violation of the Open Meetings Act. But what will that next step be? What will the board then be asked to do?
So we will be asking the board to respond that you've received it, and if you have any questions regarding any of them, we can answer them to make sure that there's no questions before bills are printed.
And
so
we will ask, when we get a question, we'll give a response and send that to the entire board.
Correct, before we go to finalize the printing. And then we'll have to have a majority of responses back saying yay or nay, so we know in order to print, we'd have to have the majority of the board to say, yes, we can go ahead and approve the list of bills.
And the board would be able to pull any items that they feel like should not be paid at this point.
Correct. And that we can pull, and then that way, if the next board meeting we need to discuss it, we can bring it there and put it back on the next list of bills to be discussed at the board meeting itself. Do we have any questions, concerns? Try to make it nice and
Yes.
simple.
The board members have in the past received, as part of the general agenda, a list of all the checks that have been written in the last month. And I've got to ask the board, how many of you have looked at that more than once, just to see what it is, and not looked at it on a regular basis with the idea of questioning any of the items? In the 4.5 years I've been here, I don't think I've heard maybe one question of that list as to what those checks were. The process that we have today, as outdated as it is that we have two people that are responsible for signing the checks. I'm one of them. And in the last check run, as an example, we had 6 pages of checks, total of $285,000. And the largest single check for $221,000 was approved through the process, and it was submitted for approval, and it was made out to the wrong payee. Now, I asked about that, and we got that corrected, and it did go out. So it was a valid bill, but it wasn't made out to the right payee with that. The differences, I think, of having people that are specifically responsible for reviewing the invoices to see that they are approved and then sign the checks is different than what is being suggested here, because this is an overgeneralization to give it to the board and say, look at these, do you approve all of these? And if you're not asking the questions, you don't have the opportunity to ask the questions, then my sense is that this is not a solid approval process as it appears here.
But every single one of you will be able to ask the questions. You'll still be able to ask those questions.
Oh, I understand that,
And
but
I want to clarify.
no one's been looking at it, and I disagree that this goes to the board for final approval.
I have a
on that.
question.
I want to clarify something real quick, though, first. The check that went out to the wrong payee, the bill in question came from Thomas Engineering. The check should have been written to Chicagoland Paving, who did the work that we worked with Thomas Engineering to do. So this is the type of error that can happen. We know that Thomas Engineering, if they had received that payment, they would have informed us and sent it back. It was all part of the process. What
This is
Thomas
not the only item,
Engineering's
Gavin.
role.
We've had.
Okay, but let me finish this sentence.
They have
So
found
the only-
time and time again where there have been questions in regards to checks.
And we have answered every one of those
That's just the most recent.
And we have answered every one of those questions. We have corrected every mistake that has ever been brought to our attention. And that's why you have a process where the board reviews all of the bills and approves all of the bills before they are sent out. That is exactly
So
how it's supposed to work.
who caught the mistake in the check? So you're saying that with this new process, you're not going to review the bills now? Because you're still going to review the bills and
but
you'll
if
be
I-
able to
if I'm-
catch the mistakes.
If I'm signing the checks, I'm going to look at it very closely. You're not signing the checks
But this is
necessarily.
electronic, so it will be
Yeah.
the same exact thing
No, I
that you're
think what
reviewing.
he's- Is what he-
Yeah. But we're going to, yeah, so you're going to stop looking
Charlie,
at it?
is what you're saying is that like on this
Too many people
calendar
are-
on the 24th, the checks will get mailed out to us on the board, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, they'll be emailed to the whole board.
Right, and we should look at because then on the 26th, you're going to, let's see, what's that blue mean? You're going to print the checks, so 2 days later, you're going to print the checks once we suppose it, and.
Once they're approved by the board, yes.
Okay, so we have to, and I have to I'm one of those people, Charlie, I never really looked at those. I mean, it was your responsibility, is the way I felt. But now that you're explaining this to us, I'm going to put it on my calendar for these dates, the 24th of September, the 27th of August, to look at the email that comes through and look at the checks.
If I may also, that,
otherwise-
working with LNA, this is best practices across many of our clients, many municipalities. This is the best practice that they bring to the board. So it's very common that you're bringing your list of boards, or your list of bills to the board for everyone to review, everyone to ask the questions they need to do. And then that way, it's also putting it onto the full board to be able to look at and review and say, what questions do I have? Does this make sense for the village? And then we cannot print until we have those full approval anyway.
As opposed to relying on one or two trustees.
I do think, though,
Which is a better practice.
You know,
to spread it
again,
out.
Charlie and I are right here tonight, I guess. Charlie does make a point when you are signing that check versus we all have, those of us with kids, when you say you guys need to clean this room, when there's not that accountability, like you have to do this and you have to do this. So, to Charlie's point, we do have to take it upon ourselves where each of us individually is responsible, as arduous as that task is going to be. Because when we have 6 of us looking at them, sometimes none of us are looking.
But what he's saying is that we're not. He's assuming we are not. And that is what is unfair.
We haven't been, but, again, when I started check writing a couple of years ago, where I was the 3rd signer after you and Brenda, yeah, I would look at them, but I assumed they were, checked, and I would scan them. But then when I was actually the signer, you do look at them a little differently. So we should all approach it as if we are the signers, not put it on just on Charlie.
Exactly. So what we're saying is that he cannot say that just because now we're all going to see it, nobody's going to see it. Because now he's saying that we're going to be in the dereliction of our own duty when we are being told to look at them.
And we have to respond regardless.
When I sign
one way or the other.
the checks today, I look to see that they've been approved. I look to see who the payee is. Occasionally, I'll ask the efficacy of a check, but I spend easily a half an hour in that process. Jim, when you look, how long does it take you to do that? You going to add? Is everybody here going to add a half an hour to, to their process?
Yes.
I think we're going to have to.
Hopefully, the system that we are integrating will not have this kind of situation occur when our staff people are supposed to check the checks and the payees. So we've had a pretty bogus system that had zero technology associated with it, manual check payments, nothing digital, no ACH, no EFT, and you signing analog checks. We have had checks lost, we've had checks stolen. So not only do we have a wrong payee, we had all those other things happen as well. We had a bad process.
Last week,
It was manual. And we are changing that. If we end up not liking this process because there's more mistakes, then we will change the process.
last week we had 3 checks that were never received by payees that we had to then cancel and reissue. The couple weeks before, it happens a lot where we have checks that have gone missing. We don't know where those checks are. We don't know who is taking those cash checks and washing them and putting new information on them and cashing them. We would eventually find out. We do have positive pay on our bank account, so that if there's anything questionable, we get contacted by, they hold the check, we get contacted by them and have to approve it manually. But there is a lot of opportunity for fraud with paper checks, and we're trying to eliminate the use of paper checks. Overall, it takes some time to get everybody on electronic payments, but we're working on that.
To Charlie's point, I do think best practices, we have to. But to your point, yeah, we should all take that half hour and see where the money's going, for sure, and make sure. That is part of the job.
So you don't just assume that we've all looked at it and approved it if you don't get any responses. You want responses from us.
Correct.
And keep in mind that the approval process, I know he mentioned he spends time to make sure, does he see an approval on it? With the new BSNA system, it can't even get to that list of bills unless it's gone through the full approval process. So it would go from an accountant to your department head, to your village administrator, to your accountant back to create that list. for your finance director to actually take a look, which would be my job, to look and say, does everything seem to make sense before it even comes to you as a board to put your approval on it too. So it's hitting a lot of eyes to make sure that, does this bill make sense? Is it legit? You know, and we have caught things even at the finance level of going, you know, should we be paying these late fees? That's what we look for. Is there taxes on it? Like, that's things that we look at too, at our level with my accountant and myself too.
Right, and last year, we forgot to pay the water bill for the countryside
Yeah.
for 200 grand. So who caught that? Right? Who caught that?
We also caught that the SBC was.
caught
Well,
that?
that doesn't change what we're talking about here.
Yes, it will, because
Yeah.
she has a system that knows gets an accounts payable record. So yeah, just like you said, we overpaid something, we didn't pay something.
So you have a
No one
list?
caught it.
You have a list? of
Including
all-
Countryside, apparently.
No, they
monthly
called
bills?
us and embarrassed us. So the process is changing. It's not going to be perfect. We are not 100% accurate, and we are going to have a new process. And if somebody doesn't like something, we're going to have a conversation at a committee of the whole and talk about it. And then we're going to make the changes. And you know what? It's not going to be perfect. So when someone makes a mistake, we're not going to hang them out on a line for everyone to flog them.
But
That's not what we're going to do.
that accuracy issue is exactly why there are multiple layers of approval. There's the department head, there's me, there's the finance department, there is the entire board that is the best way to say it, that's what you signed up for, all of you, to review bills. Because, you know, in my background from the township trustees used to be called the township auditors because part of their responsibility was approving the audited bills, list of bills. And you all are auditors in that regard too.
So let's make the agreement that if this process is not working, we are all going to talk about it and come back and make a difference, make it different. We are going to probably not have a perfect transition on the 4th of August. I'm assuming there are going to be something that doesn't go correctly or right or exactly 100%. So we all have to be able to give people some space to make the process better as we go through this, because systems are just the way it is. We hope this is all going to go well. That's why we need to really look at the next couple of months and make sure it does. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, next up, we have Parks and Facilities Use Policy. Can we quickly roll through this?
Yes, so I get a number of calls from people, can we rent Blackhawk Park? And I answer to the best of my ability. You know, we're starting to make up a process, but unfortunately somebody found something else, but then the next day I got another call. Anyway, the point is I would like to have a policy in place that I can call on when I get these questions. And this would apply not just to Blackhawk Park, Sacagawea Park, the gazebos in the parks, this room here. You know, we have users of the room who are our community partners, like the HOA that met here tonight. So we would work with our partners. We can make a change, you know, if you're an HOA in the community, if you want to, or you could apply this to them too, and we can discuss all that. But this is my first draft of a policy for village facilities and park rentals.
Can I suggest something?
Yes, ma'am.
You need to include a deposit. A refundable deposit upon review of cleanliness and, you know, of following the rules.
I think there is.
There's a $100, I think it's 100.
Well, it's a
Refundable
security deposit.
Yeah.
But it needs to be
The other thing I will add.
equitable. It needs to be as high as it could cost to clean the place if they don't follow the rules, and now our Public Works is spending 2 hours to clean. The $100 is not enough.
And I didn't see, do they have to sign a release here?
Yes, one thing I will add before I bring this to the board meeting is an insurance section.
Yeah.
On what the insurance requires and a waiver of liability.
Yeah, I misread this with the security. I just read security, and I thought it was a
Just think it needs to
security
be
fee.
higher?
No, yes, it needs to be equitable to what would cost the village to make any repairs or cleaning should they not follow the following conditions of use that says that it has to be left clean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I was going to say, I've sometimes seen, well, I've rented gazebos in my park district, and they sometimes put on there that, it's whatever the fee is, plus whatever the cost to clean,
Yeah.
like the direct cost, they bill it out.
More general language.
Right.
And public
They'll
works
pay for
people
the actual cost
Can we
of
also
cleaning.
include hours of operation?
Yes, but that comes after. They need to leave, you need to charge up front to be able to have the cost up front, and then you refund it.
This is similar to what we do on the HOA, is we have a move-in fee and a move-out fee that we collect at closing, and those get refunded, providing that everything is
It's
done
clean.
accordingly. So that's a good point.
Sorry, can we add an hours of operation, though, or maybe like a curfew, because if non-residents
yeah,
are renting
hours
it,
of
they don't
operation.
know, yeah,
And,
yeah, because you don't want them out there
levels,
until.
decibel levels, and
Yeah, well,
Don't you think the fee for a non-resident should be higher than just $25 more?
oh, it's telling me to stand because I've been sitting too long.
who knows?
Give me all your thoughts and comments.
Hey, guys, would you please email Gavin with your thoughts? I know that's adding more work to your day tomorrow, but please do that, Christina and Charlie, if you have things that need to go in here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to memorial trees and benches policy.
Very similarly, I've been getting a lot of calls about these lately, and as you know from our last meeting, there is an issue with a specific bench. But I had already been working on this before that, because just in the last couple of months, I've gotten a few calls about, can we do this? And I know we have some around the village, but I don't know what process they went through. I don't know how those were approved. There's no record of that. So again, I'm trying to put in place a policy that I can call on when somebody calls me about this.
So, hold on a second. Where, get this. So what would happen if somebody called about a bench they wanted to, I have it, a bench that they would put on village property? Like, let's take us through what happened with this bench that's sitting out on our,
So we will have an application form, and people will fill that out, we'll review it, we'll decide where in the village is appropriate for the said bench. The bench will be a standardized bench. All of our memorial benches will look the same. There will be a plaque, optional, you can put a plaque on or not, that says, has a message. There will be a limit to the characters. It'll be a 4x6 plaque. Everything will be standardized, and we will decide where it goes. We will be responsible for the maintenance, and the same with trees. You can install a plaque at the ground by the tree. There will be no extra decorations or anything else, and that's all specified in the
okay.
policy.
So we're not Chicago, we're a small village. And, if we get to the point where we have
Too many.
benches all over the place, it's,
Exactly.
somehow we have to put a limitation on it.
Right. We can always bring it back and say, we're done. with
So again, if
memorial.
you guys have anything small on here, or something you see needs to be tweaked, please get that back to Gavin before the next meeting so we can talk about it. Board meeting rules. I guess after tonight, we need some rules, huh?
We should have started with that.
So again, it's a best practice to have some kind of rules codified for how the board meetings proceed. And a lot of times, also included that is public comment policy, as well as policy. And I've added, I didn't send out
Oh, it is right now.
the last item, which is a public recording of board meetings, policy and procedures. Thankfully, our clerk pointed out to me that the public does have a right to video any public meeting. there are certain standards that we can set to regulate that, and I've added that on the last page of that policy. Excuse me. But again, if we're ever going to try to put anything in place, it has to be documented. If we have rules on public participation in meetings, those have to be posted on our website. They have to be posted in the boardroom, just so everybody knows what the process is for making a public comment, being involved. And that fits into the overall package of having rules of procedure for the board meeting. And it just makes things go more smoothly. We've also addressed the question of minutes in here.
You have to have I'm sorry, you have to have the time for debate. No member shall speak more than twice on the same question. Okay, I'm sorry. Remarks must be confined to the matter under consideration, and they shall be limited to 10 minutes per, I think it's set by the state. There's a state guideline for how long each member speaks when debating a question. It's like 10 minutes.
I always thought it's 3.
No, 3
that's
minutes is for
public.
public speaking.
Oh.
And then when you take a roll call, if you want to speak during your roll call vote, the limit is 1 minute. So
Look,
if you can check it out,
I'll get
please.
legal
You're saying it's in
opinion
the
on
state rules?
The state has guidelines for that. And then the part where it says no member shall speak more than twice on the same question without permission, it is by rule of the chair, not permission. You have this by rule of the chair.
it. I can make that change.
Thank you. It has to be codified correctly.
You're good. Excuse me.
Is that it on that? Now we would like to go on to, the next section was it department priority updates. Who would like to start? Chief Walsh?
Thank you. First, I want to thank everybody on the board for supporting the police department like you have, because we are now going to 12-hour shifts. The hiring has allowed us to do this. It's going to, well, it's going to do many things, but the main thing is for the rest of the year, we are totally covered. Normally, we would have about 9 spots per month we'd have to fill with overtime. This will be eliminated. We have scheduled out to the end of the year, and by going to these shifts, it's going to eliminate that. Now, unfortunately, we'll not get rid of all overtime because we still have holidays, and there might be some exigent circumstances, but it will greatly reduce it. I will monitor and see how we're going as we're going along, but it will greatly reduce it. But I know you wanted me to explain how the shifts work, or you just wanted to know the benefits of it?
A little bit of all of that.
Okay. The officers will work, there's 2 shifts, 6 to 6, 6A to 6P, 6P to 6A, 2 different day off keys. The officers will be working, for example, officer will work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They'll be off Monday, Tuesday. They'll work Wednesday, Thursday. They'll be off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that will just continue to repeat itself, or it's the reverse if you're on the other day off key. It's going to allow us to actually get enough staffing where we could do some initiatives, some traffic and different things that we've been asked to do here. It'll allow us to get officers out there. Like with the speed data signs, we've been gathering data now. We're going to do data-driven enforcement on those areas to where we see there are the most violations. And this is going to help us. And it's also, part-timers are going to still come in because there'll be times where, for example, like Officer Verber, he's been doing National Night Out and other things, and he's going to need to be working on that. So now we have some officers that will come in for a couple hours and allow Officer Verber to work on that stuff while we still have staffing on the street. It's a great benefit, and it's going to be, well, I'm excited about it. Trying to talk too fast here. I'm excited about it because it's the first time, I believe, in years, I've talked to Commander Gardner, who's been here 20 years. He's never had it where there hasn't been holes in his schedule. We relied so much on part-timers that, and if they couldn't come in and work, we had to force people back. So the schedule that they had was ideal on paper, but it's not ideal when you get forced back. You didn't know when you're going to get forced back. This allows the officers to know when they're working, when they're not. One of the officers that we were fortunate to get from Forest Park, their schedule was so erratic that one of the main reasons that he wanted to come here was for stability. And this will provide the stability for the officers as well as provide coverage for the village.
Chief, how many full-time officers do we?
We'll have 12. Mhm. 2 are not here yet. They have to, well, one's on vacation for a month in Greece. You know,
Is that counting Commander Gardner as one of the
no,
12?
No. He'll actually be able to do his job. Yeah. I have some other stuff, like I said, the speed data signs are up. Flock cameras. Phil is on paternity leave, but I did contact Emmy, from Flock. She put me through to Mo, who's doing the installations. He said that they're supposed to put it into Black Hawk Park this week, but only the stationary camera. The pan tilt zoom are still scheduled. They're not. They don't have an install date, but hopefully they're getting working on these. And when Phil comes back, I'll have more definite timelines for that.
Well, yeah, Mo said he's your shell answer man. So he said, reach out to him. I talked to him the other day. So he said someone was waiting on the park manager's approval. I said, well, I'm sure Chris can work on that with Joe right away.
Well, I heard there was no permits needed. We talked about that.
We had that big meeting, and we already came up with the areas. The only thing waiting on in the Public Works part of it is to bring power to that one spot where they want to put the one at Sacagawea. Otherwise, the other ones were determined.
Great.
So it's just
Thank you.
There's no reason for them. That he said by the end of this week. I haven't heard from him, so I'm not too confident it'll be this week. But hopefully by next week we'll have at least one of the cameras up.
And then are they scheduling training with you so you guys know how to use the new software and tools and all that?
I haven't scheduled any training, but yeah,
Okay.
these guys. I mean, our officers are familiar with working some of these cameras, but we'll get additional
Yeah,
training.
because there's AI in it, and there's all sorts of little things that you can set up.
Mhm.
So you know what activity is normal and what activity is not.
I don't think Public Works is going to have access to those cameras.
We're not giving.
Well, no, I'm just talking about,
Oh, you were looking at me. I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
no, the police department.
Over here.
No.
There's all sorts of bells and whistles that we are paying for, and I want to make sure that you guys are utilizing them because it will help identify activity that is not normal. It will train to know what activity is not normal, and then the police officer will be notified of that activity.
Especially near the 7-Eleven
Right.
with the AI. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Joe?
I'll just keep it brief. So I think I mentioned at the last board meeting that we were waiting on one more quote for the roof for the pump house. I have all the quotes. I'm going to speak with Gavin about that, and we'll move forward with that. And then just going on some of the tree stuff, I'll be meeting with Thomas from Penn High toward the end of this month. We're going to try and get a pruning schedule in place by the end of July. And we're going to talk maintenance on the trees that have been planted in the last 5 years to make sure that they're healthy, and if anything needs to be done, mulching, if it needs a gator bag, if they're struggling. We've had a hot summer. We're going to kind of determine what needs to be done to keep that moving forward. We're finalizing a species list for this fall's planting. We're going to plant 25 trees. So we're going to try and do, say, 5 different species. So out of the 25, we'll have 5, 5 times 5, and get those in there. And we should have the nursery hopefully picked out by the end of this month too, where we're going to get the trees from. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Clerk, do you have anything this evening?
Touching on the couple things that we haven't talked about this evening. The big, as I discussed before, we're waiting for the building and zoning code update with Safe Built. I'm still waiting to see the first draft of the building code, but otherwise the zoning code update is going along quite well. It looks to be done in about 6 months. We had a meeting with them yesterday. We have a bi-monthly, excuse me, we have a bi-monthly meeting on the Wednesday, first and third Wednesday, and that basically they've given us a significant outline of what they're going to do for the zoning code. It's going to make it much easier to interpret, much easier to use. Instead of having this jumbled together code of lists of things like haberdasheries and furriers and all the types of other uses, we're going to consolidate those, put them into kind of general use districts, and it'll make it a lot easier on everybody's part and a lot more flexible on everybody's part. That also kind of, though, will dovetail into, at that point, we're going to have to go review all the business license fees, because the ways our fees are out there, they are attached to the zoning districts, and those zoning districts won't exist anymore. Other than that, I am eagerly awaiting for BSNA so that I can stop doing so much of this work that I'm doing manually, and I can just press 2 buttons and just be done with my life. We're done with all projects like.
Not without reviewing first.
I'll make sure to review all of them first before I hit the approval button, of course. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Gavin, do you have more to report to us?
I just wanted to mention Sacagawea Park. We're moving forward with the consultant that you all approved last Thursday, and it's a pretty tight turnaround. The application is due September 13th. We talked yesterday, and we've scheduled a public meeting for August 13th to get some feedback from the community about it. We're also reaching out to some of the surrounding neighborhood, and we'll be reaching out with a questionnaire to the entire community about that opportunity at Sacagawea Park. We've also talked to the same consultant about whether he'd be able to give us some help with the heritage site planning and some ideas around that. He's reviewing. I'm sending him a lot of the information that we've already gathered, and he's reviewing that to see if that's a possibility. But we really wanted to get started on Sacagawea Park.
But we won't go for funding for that.
Right.
We're only going for the Sacagawea funding, he said.
Just because of the tight turnaround for this year and needing to get that rolling.
I mean, in addition to the funding, though, we're looking at ideas.
Yes, he said he could help facilitate like a design idea workshop with you all to show you some ideas, but he needed to get more information first.
Yep.
So if you have a date that you're thinking about getting together with your HC site committee, let us know so we can get that on his calendar.
Do you remember when it is? It's August something.
So Gavin will let him know that so he can plan, because it's only 40 days between now and when the grant's due.
That's it.
Great. Have I missed anybody? I don't think so. Oh, the public comments, yes. Any public comments this evening? Yes, Randy Dvorak.
My name is Randy Dvorak.
Can you go to the speaker, please? The microphone, the speaker. Thank you, Randy.
My name's Randy Dvorak. I live at 125 Acacia. Regarding the Memorial Tree Bench Program proposal, if you approve of these proposals, my question is about the bench out there on the berm. It says, all donations become village property, okay, which is a good idea. That bench is not village property. Will a part of if this goes through, will that then have to be village property, or will it remain private property for the owner of the bench to take whenever he wants to, or leave it there rent-free for whenever he feels like removing it or not?
So we'll consult with our attorney about that.
Okay. And it wouldn't be retroactive. In other words, the fees, the donation fees and all that, that's already.
I suspect we can't do that, but.
We're going to talk with our lawyer, and we'll let you know at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We are talking to the bench owners, so hopefully we can come to a mutually agreed upon outcome that meets the needs of everybody. So we'll try to discuss that.
I would suggest that he donate it to the village.
we will see if that's an opportunity to do that. We'll see with our lawyer. Yes, we will see what the options are and make sure we get that on the agenda. Thank you for coming. Any other public comments? Hearing none, can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
And
I'll second. Thank you.
roll call vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.